Stuart, I have no access to bring those folks in.
You should know. Just made you co-host. Maureen, I think we've got a quorum. I know that Ernest is trying to pick up his kid, and we might be waiting for a few minutes if we don't just get moving.
Okay, then thank you, Superintendent Goldman. I will do that. Two things. Vice Chair Maureen Wolf, I will be presiding over this evening's meeting while Chair Timchuk is away this evening. And just to inform the general public, the board did meet in executive session under ORS 192-660-2H earlier this evening. And with that, we will be called to order. And Valerie, if you would do roll call, I would appreciate it.
Director Chris Riley. You could please unmute and
Here.
Director Lillian Russell.
Here.
Director Doug Doherty.
Here.
Director Maureen Wolf.
Here.
Director Michelle Graham.
Here.
Director Miriam Meneses Rios.
Here.
Director Paul Jarrell.
Good evening. Here.
And I believe Director Ernest Stevens is on his way, possibly. And Director Becky Timchuk is excused from this meeting.
Okay. Thank you very much. And with that, we will move forward on the agenda, and I will recite the land acknowledgement. We want to acknowledge that we gather as the Northwest Regional ESD on the traditional lands of the Chinook, Clatskanie, Clatsop Nehalem, Kalapuya, Siletz, and Tillamook peoples, past and present, and honor with gratitude the land itself and the people who have stewarded it throughout our generations. And I think our next agenda item, Superintendent Goldman, are there any changes to the agenda?
Madam Chair, good evening. There are no changes to the agenda from the administration. Thank you.
Okay. Board members, any comments, changes? Okay. We will move forward with the superintendent report.
Okay, well, good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. I hope everybody's warm tonight as we see the impending potential ice and snow coming through the region from the south. I've been on many phone calls with many different superintendents in our region this evening, and I think everybody's sufficiently scared of what might occur as the weather here won't really show itself according to forecasts until about 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. And we all know by that time buses are on the road, kids are on buses. And so it's going to be a pretty precarious morning and an early morning for lots of school folk in tomorrow. So hopefully we get it all right and we do our forecasting perfect. With that, I did want to start tonight, like I did in my written report, talking about our classified staff. By the next time the board will meet, it'll already be Classified Appreciation Week, and so we have a resolution tonight, of course, and we'll be bringing in some of our classified leaders. But before you guys get to brag on them, I get to brag on them a little bit. We have an amazing group of people who work at the ESD, not just our classified staff, but our licensed and our administrators, and everybody who's involved, such caring people. Our classified staff is this really broad range of folks at the ESD, particularly. Like for us school district people, people who spent time in school districts, the ESD is like times 10 in terms of like just the differences in what people are doing. So uh, we have people who are building applications and really some high tech cybersecurity folks, in addition to like instructional assistants and behavior specialists and the frontline staff who are with kids directly, everything from licensed practical nurses all the way to speech path assistants, um, grant writers, folks who obviously keep our facilities clean and are who schedule events and make sure that bills are paid on time, um, translators and interpreters. We have folks who scribe Braille. I mean, incredibly technical and skilled staff in our classified ranks. And they are good-hearted people who do the work for kids. And so I'm just very grateful for our classified folks. I know that I speak for our licensed staff and the administrators as well. And I just want to thank the board, of course, for honoring them tonight. And then you guys get to brag on them in a little bit here while we bring in a couple of our representatives. Yesterday, I spent the day in the Capitol, and there's a lot going on in the Capitol. So we're at the beginning of the legislative session, obviously. It feels like we've been in it for months, but it really has really just started, and it's going to be a long haul. Obviously, I read my report this week that I wrote last week, and it was a little bit more optimistic, than I feel now. And then next week, I'll probably feel optimistic about what's going on again. But there's lots of peaks and valleys through the session. That's just the nature of it. And there's going to be a lot of loose ends, and then they'll get tightened up very quickly at the end. So it's a long road, and we'll just have to be patient through the process. We have already been quite visible as an organization at the legislature. I've testified in committee. Kathy Jensen did an awesome job testifying in committee that was related to regional inclusive services. Mine was more, we have so many new legislators, and ESDs are so weird, right? And indescribable in some ways for people that I was pleased to be invited to the House Ed Committee to just talk about what ESDs are and just educate the House Committee on the things that ESDs do. So that was nice and exciting and all that. And then yesterday, like I said, I spent the day in the Capitol, and I did want to talk. This is not something that I wrote in my report because it didn't happen yet, but we had an op-ed in the Oregonian around Oregon's academic malaise, I would say, compared to other states coming out of the pandemic. And I thought the article was quite damning and very depressing. And then I kind of went through I'm going through the cycles of grief. And there's a part where you get to anger. And I got into that place. And I'll tell you why, as a board, I get to this place. When we are compared to other states related to our standardized test scores in the state of Oregon, and that is the metric by which we get told that we are above or below other places, or how we get qualified. That really chafes me here in the state of Oregon. And by we, I mean the legislature and the governor at the time, about 10 years ago, maybe 11 years ago, made a decision and passed bills to allow our students and families to opt out of state assessments. During that ramp up, there was a lot of, I believe, misinformation about what standardized assessments are or aren't, and what they're good for and what they're not. And there was a decision the legislature finally made that decision for opt-out, and then required school districts to send notices every year to families about their rights to opt out. the statewide unions and others got behind this effort. And we have for a decade told families in the state of Oregon that summative assessments do not matter. And now the same legislature, right, the same body is now saying, you guys are failing as a school system because your third grade rates are not as high as those around us. And I think it's disingenuous. I spent a lot of time in the legislature. I talked to everybody that I could and I wasn't planning on doing that, but I wanted to talk to individual legislators that I know and ask them to please knock it off because it's not fair, it's disingenuous, and it is doing damage to our education system in the way that people think about public educators. So just wanted the board to know I went off script and decided that that was not a tolerable situation for me. And I have some plans to broaden that conversation in the state and try to get a little bit more nuance rather than just looking at the hard data and saying Oregon's like one of the worst states in the country. We are not. And actually, I will say this, before that decision was made, Oregon wasn't one of the worst standardized test states in the country. A matter of fact, there were a number of districts in Oregon that not only were like, doing the right work around reading instruction and getting really amazing results here in Oregon that were recognized at the national level by big scientific and education research federal groups like Tiger Tualatin, where I was at the time, and Maureen was on the board there. Were named a top 10 school district in the country in terms of producing reading results on standardized assessments. And now that district would not be recognized because of all the stuff that has happened. So I just want our board to know, I think we can do better by describing what's actually happening in Oregon. And having said all that, we do need to teach kids to read and be successful here, and we need to know if we're meeting those benchmarks. So I'm highly supportive of an accountability system that is honest, that is rigorous, and that holds the whole system accountable for the success of kids. So I really strongly believe in that. I just also strongly believe in honesty. So with that, there are a lot of other things happening in the legislature. I put a few pieces here in the written report just on bills that I think this board would be particularly interested in. We have the current service level bill, which is the state school fund it's the state school fund bill, and locks in a more accurate methodology for future biennia. So it's a really important bill. It's currently in Ways and Means. There's House Bill 2682, which is about early childhood special education and early intervention. And what we are pushing for here, this is kind of one of our bills, really. We are pushing for a study for the next biennium to lock in a new way for us to calculate what the adequate service and current service level budgets should be for EIECSE. That's based on all the pain that we have gone through this biennium, as that formula didn't take into account things like COVID-19 and enrollment and those types of stuff. So we need a different, more nuanced formula. So that's what that's about. SB 868 is regional inclusive services. Like I mentioned, Kathy did a great job in that meeting. There was already a study on this program that had recommended funding levels. We are being told that we're about 50%. That right now in the governor's budget, plus some funds from ODE that can be brought to bear in this program in special education, that we're estimating about $75 million statewide into this program. The committee that was put together by the legislature recommends that budget to be about $122 million, just to give you a sense of how short we are in terms of providing an adequate level of service in that program. So we've got a lot of gap to fill there. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff in here, and I don't need to reread the report. The other piece here that I did want to mention is the legislative concept that we've been working on for CTE, for Career Technical Education and Workforce Development. That has been turned into a bill. The bill has been set. It does put ESDs in a different role in terms of trying to bring together our partners from higher education, like community colleges, with like Paul's with TBCC, but also the HEC, the Higher Education Coordinating Commission, together with workforce boards, with our K-12 schools, and center regional efforts through a brokering power of ESDs. And so it'll be a shift if it goes through. I think it's the beginning of a conversation this legislative session and not the end of one. But it is a significant ask and a significant price tag that would truly invest in workforce development programs in Oregon in a way that we haven't in the state. So I wanted to make sure you all knew that that was going. I know that the board is aware that we've been leaning into all the changes around the federal government that we are blasted with every morning when we wake up and turn on our news feeds. And I know it is incredibly difficult for staff in the public education. I'm sure people just in public service in general, because of the way that we fund public service in our country. We have lots of intermingled revenue streams. We have tried to create conditions with federal resources that you can't do on the state level on your own. And so every one of these really scares the living daylights out of real people with real lives, with children and families that they need to take care of. So every time one of these drops, I get a number of emails from staff, and I know my superintendent colleagues are experiencing the same thing. And it's like the shiny object every day, and then everybody jumps in. And I think one thing that I'm trying to implore with our board here and with our staff is we're not going to go hysterical every day around this stuff. But there are some things that we need to pay attention to big time. So the board, I was very proud of this board that you took action, that you did around our resolutions to support our immigrant students. And the board should know that we have completed a set of trainings with our front office staff and our frontline administrators on how to handle inquiries by federal agencies into what students are registered or at school and that type of thing. So we've done a lot of training. We've then provided a lot of those resources to our school districts. I have a meeting with superintendents on Friday from our 20 regional stuff, and we're all going to bring our resources together and just talk about how districts are handling these things together, so we can see if there's more learning to be had across the region around these types of things. And of course, different communities will deal with this in different ways. So that's occurring. And then we have the federal freeze and the announcements there. The board, I'm sure you're keeping up somewhat, but a federal judge suspended that, and then the administration withdrew that. But as smarter people than me say, like, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them, right? So like, I don't think that issue's fully gone away or anything, and we can see how that's true right now with other functions in the federal government right now. So we've had lots of conversations with ODE around what it would really mean if all of a sudden we didn't get funding for special education from the federal government. Title 1 and 2. So this is Title 1 is for students who are experiencing economic hardship. Like Title III is our English language learner programs. So there's a set of federal programs called title programs. Really, the answer is nobody knows. Right now, what we do know is that the funds that have already been allocated in this year's budget, which goes through September in the federal government, are already deployed and they legally cannot be taken back. So we're okay for now. But people are very nervous about setting their budgets for next year and struggling through what all the contingency plans would be. And then finally, on supporting our LGBTQIA plus students, so far, state officials here in Oregon are helping us by putting out guidance from the state that requires us really to follow state guidance in supporting students who are gender expansive. So we're following the laws for students, using ODE's guidance, and then around staff, the BOLI rules for staff. And it's really, these are things that are already reflected in our policy. The one thing I would say is, beyond just the technical there, is that the federal administration has made it clear that they don't really care if you're an official and you're following state law that they don't agree with. And so it's like I meet with a lot of leaders across the state, and there's a lot of fear for people who are trying to follow the law and they're just caught between federal and state disagreements. And I'll also say that I'm very proud of my colleagues. They are staying true to their values and their organizations. And I'm, like I said, I'm proud of them because it's a tough place for them to be. Kind of feels like COVID all over again. And I think I'm going to end with some happiness, right? So we've got two things that I referenced here in my report. One is around our human resources team and getting a grant, and the other is around our finance services team. So 17 years in a row now, our finance team has achieved the highest level of excellence and award for transparency in our fiscal practices. So the GFOA award is a rigorous award. It is something to hang our hats on, and for you as a board to feel confident about the way that we are communicating our budget, our actuals, and the transparency and a transparency in how we do that. So super proud of Jordan and really Tara Van Dyke and the entire team there in the finance office who work very hard every year, kind of all year, on audit and preparing the documents for this award. So it's a great thing, and I'm really, really pleased with that. And then lastly, our human resources team was awarded $130,000 from Meyer Memorial. It's not easy to get repeat awards from Meyer Memorial. We have gotten quite a number of funding applications funded at Northwest Regional ESD through Meyer Memorial Trust. And that's because we continue to deliver on what we say we're going to do. So this particular grant is about employment pathways and diversifying our workforce. So there were a massive amount of applications, as you see here. Only 50 out of 350 were even selected to be, screened into interview. And we did not believe, because there's so much competition, we were going to get this award. But Yolanda Coleman and others in our Diverse Educator Pathway program made it happen. And so we got some more resource into this important program that we already do across the region, and our districts are highly engaged in the work of diversifying our education workforce. So congratulations to those folks too. And I'm happy to take any questions the board might have.
Thank you, Superintendent Goldman, and I love how kind of you wrapped it up back to classified celebrations, and just again reminding us what a diverse set of individuals those are. So I just want to say thank you, Dan. The emotions, I mean, the amazing work that's happening while navigating everything that is in and not in your control and trying to do all that's right for kids. So, but with that, I'll open it up to board members. Questions for Superintendent Goldman. Okay. All right, that covered a lot of territory. We will move forward. Is Director Simmons here? I think.
Yep. She'll come in.
Okay, recognition and good news this evening. Very excited. It is for Classified Appreciation Week, and there she is. Thank you, Director Simons. And I will, with that, unless Director or Superintendent Goldman, you have comments, I'll just hand it off directly to Debbie.
I think you've heard from me enough now, so you can go right to Debbie.
Gonna drink some fluids and get his throat back. Thank you, Debbie.
I am so excited to be here to share with the board this resolution for classified staff. You know, our classified staff, and you see in the resolution that I put together that our theme for this year is about piece by piece, we make a difference for our classified staff. Our classified staff often go unrecognized as some of our best educators. They often are not licensed teachers, they're not therapists, they're not nurses, and at the same time, they are our staff that work often one-on-one with students, there when kids are having a rough day. And I just cannot recognize this group of classified staff enough. And additionally, also being able to recognize particularly the association that represents our classified staff, and that's OSEA. OSEA has worked very hard to build a positive relationship with the ESD, and we mutually problem solve situations and issues that come up as partners, and that's a partnership that's felt deeply in the ESD. And so, Valerie, I don't know if Tammy and Margaret are in, because I can't see them yet, but when I put a call out to Ethan Ockrey, the president of our local chapter of OSEA, like, do you have anyone who can be at the board meeting? I had thought maybe Ethan would be available and talking about the leadership. And he's like, I can't, but here's some other people. And the reality is for the board, if these two weren't available, we could just keep going. There are literally hundreds of phenomenal classified staff throughout our region who get up every day to do the very best work they can with kids. I do want to highlight Margaret and Tammy, and I told them this morning, all they had to do was let me brag on them a little bit. And being, you know, the person kind of in charge of HR, I have access to kind of go digging. And so I did that today, just out of, you know, curiosity to see. I know them because I meet with them frequently, but starting with Tammy Frame, Tammy was one of the very first people I met when I joined the ESD, and I have found her heart for kids as well as her colleagues in the classified colleagues, as well as licensed and administrative. There is not a person who has a bigger heart than Tammy Frame. Tammy began as a sub for the ESD in September of 2008. 2 years later, she moved into an instructional assistant position where she worked for about 7 years until she was hired as a transition specialist in 2017. Tammy, you may not be thrilled with me for this, so I'm going to apologize in advance. I took a peek at what Tammy's goals were for this year, what her professional goals were, and I am constantly surprised by some of the things that our classified staff do that we often just don't even know. And so Tammy is working on building a hydroponic tower with kids in terms of doing, I'm sure science, it doesn't say that, but when you looked at the detail of what her project was and what she's looking at and the detail of it, I love this comment under the section that says, is there anything else we should consider? And a very matter-of-fact statement, the learning curve could be a bit challenging. And that was it. And so then I went and I looked at Tammy's last evaluation, and I just want to read a couple of sentences for the board. Her supervisor wrote that you are a highly reliable staff member and you ask for leave well in advance when you're able. You exercise discretion and confidentiality, and you prioritize the needs of the students. You routinely seek out feedback from your coworkers and your supervisor, and you take that feedback in order to improve your own performance. You seek out professional development opportunities, and you provide support to achieving program and district initiatives. Finally, you volunteer to take on additional responsibilities when the needs arise. For example, food pantry, serving lunch, filling in at the front desk, planning for events, etc. Not all of those things are things that Tammy is hired by the ESD to do, but all of that commitment and that loyalty and dedication are the things that many of our classified staff do daily to make a difference to kids. The term educator applies to them as much as it does others. Then there's Margaret. Margaret continues to offer me the opportunity to come work alongside her in her work location. And there are days that I would love to take her up on it because she tells me it's quieter back there. Margaret was hired in August of 2017 as a Braille transcriber. And when I looked at her professional goal, she is working on becoming certified in Nemeth, and I'm probably not saying that right, Margaret, Nemeth Braille certification. And when you think, if those of you that were on the board last year would remember the demonstration we had about the materials that our Braille staff provide to our visually impaired students, the work that they do is pretty incredible. And here's what Margaret's supervisor had to say in her evaluation. Margaret has a remarkable ability to tackle challenging tasks such as Nemeth code and creating tactile graphics. Her attention to detail is nothing short of phenomenal, ensuring that every transcription is accurate and meticulously formatted. Her efforts have a significant impact on the efficiency and effectiveness of our department. Thanks to Margaret's hard work and dedication, students have timely access to the materials that they need, which is crucial for their academic success. Margaret's commitment, coupled with her extraordinary support, makes her an invaluable asset to our team. And I would say that both of these ladies exemplify the quality of classified staff that we are fortunate enough to enjoy here at the ESD. They make a remarkable difference, and their leadership and partnership with the ESD through OSEA is nothing short of remarkable. While I could read the resolution word for word, it felt to me more important to recognize the individual contributions that those classified staff members did make. I would ask that the board approve the resolution at its convenience. However, these two, as well as our hundreds of others, make a difference every single day, and we're lucky to have them.
Thank you so much, Chief Human Resource Officer Simons. We have it right now, board, to approve this resolution while Margaret and Tammy are here. And Tammy, we can't virtually see you, but so appreciate you both being here. You know, when I was at Tiger Tualatin, I still believe classified are so integral in the first impression we give students, we give families. Your impact, I get emotional again, is so critical, so vast in how we deliver services to children. And so I'm thrilled that you two are here to accept this resolution. And just, I know that you will be celebrated in March, and we will be cheering you on, and just thank you for what you do every day. And with that, I offer up to the rest of the board if they'd care to share anything. Okay. Oh, Doug, please.
Thanks. I think most of you know that I've worked in a school district for over 35 years, so I really understand what classified staff do. And it's one of those things that the skills they come in with and develop over time are amazing, and they make such a difference with not only our students, but also with our staff and our administrators. And they provide on a daily basis relationships and commitment and provide invaluable resources to our students. In fact, in many ways, there are, our classified staff develop really important relationships with our students. Students gravitate in very unique ways to classified staff just because they see them differently. And it's amazing what they can do for students. And I've seen, high school graduates come back and just thank elementary school and middle school and high school uh, employees just for the differences they've made. And I just know that that's something that is happening in Northwest Regional ESD as well. So just thank you so much for everything that you've done and to continue to do.
Thank you, Doug. Paul.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Yeah, my gratitude also. I have spent my adult life in higher education in a variety of settings. I know that I couldn't have been successful in my role as a teacher or an administrator without the amazing support that I received from classified staff along the way. And, classified employees perform a wide variety of roles for the institutions that they serve. And I'm sure that's true at the ESD as well. And I just a heartfelt thank you and gratitude for being dedicated educators, no matter what your role is at the institution. So again, thank you. You make a difference for our communities.
Thank you both. And at this point, I would entertain a motion to approve Resolution 25007.
I will move that we approve of Resolution 25007, appreciating classified staff.
And seconded by Stevens.
Excellent. Motion was made by Bradley, seconded by Stevens to approve Resolution 25007. Any additional comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion unanimously carries. And again, thanks you guys for taking your time once again out of your busy days to be here with us. And we truly appreciate it. And Debbie, thank you for just a fabulous presentation of the skills and the heart that's delivered every day by Classified.
Thank you.
Okay, you guys, you're always welcome to stay, but you can also go enjoy the rest of your night and stay warm.
Well, thank you all so very much. This is Tammy. Thank you all so very much. Being part of this classified group is not only an honor, but it's a privilege. And I will be retiring in a couple of years, and I've already started to get a little sad about not being with the kids every day. But just seeing the successes, whether they're big or small, that's why we do what we do. And we have to have that passion. And every single person that I know has that passion. So thank you all so very much. And Debbie, I'll be calling you.
I'm counting on it.
Mark, would you like to share anything? Oh, all right. Well, this is your shot. You got the boards. So that's okay. Again, you guys, thank you for everything you do every day for our kids.
Well, I do want to thank you. Thank you for the recognition. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Margaret and Tammy.
Okay, so we will move to our next agenda item, which is public comment. Valerie, do we have any public comment this evening?
No, Vice Chair, we do not.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is the consent agenda, which includes approval of January 25 board minutes, January 25 personnel reports, policies CCG, GCDA, and GDDA, policy JOA, adopt the 25-26 operational calendar, and election of the OAESD chair-elect, which good on Jeffrey Cropper for stepping up to do that. So with that, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Stevens
Second.
seconds.
Okay, motion was made by Director Riley, seconded by Director Stevens to approve consent. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries unanimously. And with that, we will move on to reports and discussions. And Dan, do you want me to introduce this or would you like to do that? Okay. Our first report this evening is the, oh, you guys, I need my, I'm not using my glasses, so sorry. Pause for a second. The regional mentoring program, and I'd like to welcome Yolanda Coleman, Jerome Townsend, and Nahid Brown. Give it up for Nahid. She's a TTSD alum.
Good evening. I know Director Jerome Townsend will be coming in. He's going to start us off first.
All right, I think I made it. All right. Good evening, Board of Directors, Superintendent Goldman. We are really, really happy to be here before you tonight. Not too long, but we are still happy. We hope that everyone is taking care of themselves and having a plan to stay warm and safe tomorrow with the incoming weather. Trying to be optimistic about the weather. Think about where I'm from back home. They are expecting 12 inches of snow. So I couldn't imagine what that would look like here in Oregon or what that would be here, but maybe that's a way of staying optimistic around, some other places in our country where it can be a lot worse. We're excited to talk to you about our regional mentoring, give you some updates, including some successes, challenges, and there's always some challenges and what we're looking at in the future with our mentoring. I like to mention just off the start that we are engaging right now. 14 out of our 20 districts are participating in our mentoring program, which includes 315 novice teachers, 53 mentors, and of that 53, we have 30 full-time, full release mentors and 20 partial release mentors. So again, we're going to talk to you just about a little bit what's happening with the mentoring, including the one-time state allocation that we receive funding for and how we're utilizing that funding within our districts. And to keep in line with highlighting our classified staff, we have Yolanda here, who was our retention, talent and acquisition and retention administrator. She also leads our diverse educator pathways program. She'll be here to talk about our classified mentoring and give you some updates on what that looks like. So right now I'm going to turn it over to Nahid Brown, who's our program administrator for our regional mentoring program.
Thank you, Director Townsend. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for letting us come and give an update, Board of Directors and Superintendent Goldman. If you could move to the next slide, please, Valerie. Thank you. And as Jerome was saying, that these are the participants we have currently. We have 315 novice teachers who are receiving mentoring. Right here, you see the districts who are currently participating. And we have 53 mentors. Out of them, 33 of them are full release. And that means that's their full-time work, job, role as a mentor. And then we have 20 partial release, which means they're classroom teachers and they're doing mentoring on the side as an additional duty and role. And I put a key there, the district that you see with an asterisk, those are the districts who are also, those are charter schools. And then the district that has a plus sign next to them, those are the districts actually who are using, we have hired 2 full release mentors at the ESD because we wanted to meet the districts where they are. So you have new teachers, we are here to support and give you the support as needed. So Rainier, Bangs, Hope Chinese as well as Gaston, Jewel, Rainier, they are the ones who our mentors are supporting their new teachers. Next slide, please. Yeah, so when last time when we presented to you, we were kind of getting into that, getting the mentor program started, right? So we are part of the Oregon Mentor Program. That's an initiative through the Educator Advancement Council, the ESC, and it's a one-year grant. And ODE has adopted Oregon Mentor Program standards, and we follow all those standards, and one of them is providing high quality professional learning for mentors, which we are doing. And we are kind of the envy of the other state programs, because in the sense, the program standards that ODE has adopted has been developed by New Teacher Center, who's a nationally recognized organization. And we are providing the training for our mentors through New Teacher Center. And I've linked them over here in case any of you are interested to see. And the mentor program standards are also linked on that slide. And in addition to providing that high quality mentor training, one of them in person is coming up next week on the 13th. And if anyone is interested to come, it's going to be in person here at the Washington Service Center. We have the all-day training happening. And that's where the mentors are getting the high leverage tools that they're using to mentor and have those coaching conversations with the novice teachers. We are also providing sub costs for when folks come for our trainings. But not only that, when mentors go, to visit the partial release mentors, when they come, they need the subs. But if they're doing classroom visits, we also provide sub costs for mentees to go and observe classrooms along with their mentors. Mileage is also, of course, reimbursed. And then we are also providing stipends for classroom teachers who are the partial release mentors. As I said before, we have 2 full release ESD mentors the 2 FTs that we hired last year. I do one-on-one check-ins with the program leads, as well as building principals as needed. We hold a regional community of practice with the program leads. The next one is coming up on the 25th of this month. And that's where we kind of gather together, talk about various successes, problems of practice, what can we do to get the feedback to make this program strong and relevant to meet the needs of the different districts. We are also providing, in addition to having the training for the mentors, but also how can we provide PD that's relevant for the new teachers that the mentors are mentoring. So currently we are partnering with the BSD, the Beaverton School District mentors, who are full release mentors. And we'll be taking some of the mentors from the other districts to kind of observe and participate in that. We are also partnering with our own early literacy team, and they're going to be holding 2 in-person PD on science of reading for the mentees coming up in April. So that way we're leveraging that, okay, this is what the mentees are needing. That's what the mentors are finding, and so we can make it more relevant and useful for both mentors and mentees. We send monthly newsletter. They're also linked over here, which takes you, if you click on them, you'll see all the letters that have all the information, takes you to our website, which has all the resources. When we have the virtual forums, we have the recordings there, as well as all the tools and materials. And we are also offering monthly meetups for mentors to come. That's when the cross-district collaboration can happen. People can talk with each other, and we're offering those for partial release, full release, as well as SPED mentors. Next slide, please. Yeah, and then as we, ongoing feedback is so vital for us to know how we are doing. So after every training sessions, we'll have the feedback that New Teacher Center, they themselves take from the participants, which they share with us. We look at what the participants had said, and then based on those, we do the next training based on the feedback from the mentors, right? And then we also ongoing from the mentees as well, how the experience has been, how they're getting the support as needed, what mentors are saying about. One of the things we saw that support and protected time to do mentoring in the right way that NTC prescribes, that what is the right way of mentoring. It's not just coming and checking in the corridor and saying, hey, how's it going? Do you know what the coffee machine is? But it's really having that impactful conversations and classroom observations, doing lesson planning, modeling together, and all those. So those are the ongoing feedback we are always diligent about getting. And then ODE has also done a mid-year feedback from mentees and mentors across the state. So we were given a glimpse of the state data, and we are waiting by mid-February. We are hoping to get our regional specific data from the mentee satisfaction as well as mentor, that how it's going. And it'd be great to just kind of compare that along with the other mentor feedback from the different programs around the state. And what we also would like to see, what is the difference between the experience of full release mentors versus partial release mentors, right? Because those who are classroom teachers, we know how the load of work they have. And for them to do mentoring, that's an additional duty, right? Additional thing on the plate that for them. So how is their experience versus full release mentors who are that's their sole purpose to work to do. And then again, overall, to see that overall teacher retention, and that's where the mentor program came. So in over 2 years, are these teachers who got mentored in the right way, are they staying in the workforce? Are they staying in the districts that we supported? So that would be our overall, in the coming 2 years to gather that data. Next slide, please. Yeah, and so one of the things that the ESC, this is a 1-year grant, right? So one of the things the ESC requires us is that mentors should have contact time with their mentees for at least 75 hours throughout the whole year. And that has become quite a conversation point, because even if you're full release mentors have up to, say, 26. Some of the mentors that we have from the different districts, they can have up to 26 mentees. And for them to go and visit, and how is that going to look like to be able to spend 75 hours throughout the whole year, even if it is throughout the whole year. Some of them are able to do it and so we are looking for ways, how can you do it? How can you leverage those hours? Could you be in a meeting together? Could you be in a training together? Could you have those conversations so you could still log in those hours? And as we meet, we also meet statewide with the other mentor program leads. And we talk about this in our community of practice, right? To see how those are being, and that's the story we'll actually share with the state later on, to say that how was that successful or not, and what are the things that need to be tweaked and changed if this is to continue. Next slide, please. And so what we are also doing, and by the way, New Teacher Center, their prescribed hours are 180 minutes per month, which is roughly about, if you think about the whole academic year, is about 27 to 30 hours for the whole year. So that's a huge difference, right? So that's where we're kind of trying to see how can we leverage a 75 hours versus what research says, what New Teacher Center is saying. That's where the program standards are based upon that 180 minutes per month minimum of that, right? So what we have, thanks to our data specialist, Bailey, she has helped us create this dashboard, and which is amazing, because what happens is, and we also developed a mentor-mentee contact logging tool, and that has all the drop-down menu. I can share a blank copy if you wanted to see all the tools that they use, how was the tool used for what kind of meeting, one-on-one or classroom observation. So all those are in there. And then it also averages the hours spent per mentee. And you can see the ones that show green, that's like, okay, they're meeting the need. So what we have put for our strat plan goal is at 180 minutes. If they meet that, that's satisfying, or that's meeting the goals that we had made for ourselves for our program. And then those are in pink. Well, they're not quite there yet. So this is just a snapshot of just a few weeks ago. And so we have the more recent data. And then you can see on the rightmost column, we also disaggregating by who are the full release mentors and who are the partial release mentors and all that. So that will give us that full picture of how this is all going to shape up. How was this year's experience? Next slide, please. So planning ahead, as I was saying, that this is a 1-year funding from the Educator Advancement Council. And as we share these stories, legislators and we will be the ESC will also share the stories about how successful this has been. What a great way to actually support the new teachers that we have in the entire state. And should the fund not come, what can we do? Because we still want to continue, right? So we'll be applying for rent funds, which will hopefully will stay the same as we got for this past biennium. And we will continue with all the existing services and supports that we have provided. And the new possibilities we are thinking, and we are looking at districts actually talking about administrative mentoring, if that's a possibility, and that could come under our mentor program. SPED mentoring is another possibility. CTE mentoring, and talked recently with the CTE team here. So those are the new possibilities that might be coming our way as well. So that's all I have. If you have any questions, I think Yolanda presents after that, right? Thank you. Yes.
So we'll take a second there. Nihi, thank you. That was a lot of great information, but I want to do a pause and see if any board members have questions up to this point that Nihi presented. Yeah, Dorian.
It's a really brief question. For the data you plan to collect, especially around teacher retention, do you plan to collect identity-based information like gender, sexuality, race, ethnicity? I'd be really interested to see the results.
I'm so glad you asked that. As we are already planning for next biennium, we actually developed what we call a professional learning plan, PLP, and one of the indicators we have for our output and outcomes is doing that to see the experience of BIPOC educators, mentors, mentees, and all the different identities. Definitely. Thank you for that.
Anyone else? So Nihid, I just had a quick question on the 75 hours. So I tried to do just really super quick math on 75 hours, 26 for full time, and what I think might be a contract, even days or student contact days. And I don't even know that that's possible unless you're doubling up in some kind of group work. But then I thought it was 75 hours. I almost need to flip back on one-on-one. So it just seemed like already that expectation didn't seem appropriate. And I appreciated the minute breakdown and how many were hitting that mark. So I just wanted to circle back to that because that surprised me, I guess.
Yeah, and that's been an ongoing conversation. We meet once a month with all of the program mentor program leads, and an ongoing conversation that initially when the mentor program first came into being in Oregon, I think it was back in 2008 and 9, it was initially 95 hours. So I don't know where that magic number came from, and that has now been put down to 75 hours. And if a full release mentor, now here's the other thing, new teacher center research also says that even if a full release mentor should not have more than 15 mentees. So some of the district full release mentors actually have as high as 26 men, because again, that's how, budget is restricted. That's how people are trying to meet all the needs and all the new teachers that needs to be served. So that is, even for our full release mentors, that's already a high number. Then what we have tried to encourage is when districts have partial release mentors, we have encouraged them not to give more than one teacher. So just one mentee per mentor, so grade level team member or someone in the building in that way, so that it's not. So most of them do have just one. We do have a few partial release mentors who have, I think that 3 of them have 3 mentees, and 3 or 4 of them have 2 mentees. So that's going to be interesting to see how that pairs out, because it takes an extra amount of time to be able to do that mentoring in the true sense of the term that we know is successfully done, right? Not just checking in to see how you're doing, but really having those meaningful, reflective conversations.
Thank you. And my last question, and then we'll move forward, is, and I know you're in the process of collecting data, but what are you learning in terms of, I appreciated seeing supports from administrators and just that time to do the work, but what are you learning that maybe are some of those biggest hurdles of new teachers that are getting addressed by having a mentor?
From the new teachers, some of the things, big asks are classroom management. Some of the big asks are about lesson planning is one of them. Behavior management, of course, is one. And another interesting thing we actually just met with, we also have an advisory group that for our mentor program. So what we did was, so that there's multiple perspective, I have a full release mentor from Hillsborough, a full release mentor from Beaverton. So these are our two big districts. And then mentor from Vernonia, one of our smaller districts, a mentee from Jewel, who's getting mentored by one of our mentees. So I wanted to really have that multiple perspective so that we can really get to know what is happening in the field. And then we also had an administrator from banks. So from the administrator's perspective, how it is, what is working, what's not. And one of the things, it was interesting that if a mentor has, even if a full release mentor, their background is, say, for instance, elementary, and they're mentoring high school teachers. So that's the cross collaboration is helping us so much, because then we found, okay, here's a mentor who is actually has high school experience. Let's have that mentor come and collaborate with you. So in fact, our full-time mentor, Danny, who has a high school experience, she's going to go to that Hillsborough mentor and then actually pair up with them to do classroom and the model engagement in math classes. So that's what we are seeing, that engagement is, because engagement is another one. What does engagement look like in elementary classrooms versus secondary, middle, and high school is completely different, right? So those are the little nuances. And as we meet regularly, the mentor monthly meetups will also help. And then, of course, our advisory team. So it's just so interesting. You saw Arco Iris is one of our schools, and it's a Spanish immersion school. And we also have Hope Chinese Charter School. That's another immersion school. And then we actually doing that, what I call cross-pollination, having them visit each other's. The dual immersion schools have different needs, but at the same time, there's some similarity. What could the mentors and the mentees learn from each other? And visiting other classrooms help a lot to see what's happening in a veteran teacher's classroom, and the mentors are actually taking from one district to the other.
I love it. Okay, well, very good. Well, I think I'll be quiet and we will.
And you're welcome to come and observe any of these times that we go out for instructional rounds. Absolutely.
I would love it. Thank you. Okay, Yolanda, please. And my apologies, but I appreciate the opportunity to ask questions.
Okay, with our classified mentoring, this is a pilot program that we're doing this year that has been funded by with RIN support as well. And right now we have it at 3 different locations. Originally, the program was going to be focused on just instructional assistance, but mid-year we had an opportunity to also offer the support to one of our new receptionists that had started. And so we wanted to expand that for a couple of different reasons. One, to make sure that the new person had support, but also to kind of see what additional limits of the program could be, how else we could kind of stretch out and make sure that we were meeting everybody's needs. At 2 of our locations, there are one location has two new mentees, and the other site has 5 new mentees. And what's unique about each of these is the one location that has the 2 mentees, they both started out new. And so they had an opportunity to participate by shadowing the mentor, and the mentor could also shadow the mentee. And with instructional assistant positions, that is so key, because people come to that field with a lot of different experience or backgrounds. Sometimes we're fortunate enough that we have somebody that maybe has lots of experience, 10, 12 or more years of experience working with kids. But quite often, my experience has been you get people who like kids and really want to help, and they want to help in the school system, but they maybe don't have that background. And it's helpful that if they've had their own kids, but it's still very different when you walk into a school setting, an educational setting, and you're supporting students in the classroom. It's been great because oftentimes you'll have a rough day, and so to have that mentor right there on site to debrief with the mentee is so helpful. When I was debriefing and checking in with one pair, it was helpful because the mentee was able to say, "I was so glad that this person was here because I left that day. I don't know if I would have come back if she weren't here," and that was the key that having been a building principal, that was my experience. You want to catch people before they decide that they don't want to do this anymore and they're not coming back. Um, Oftentimes, something that is really helpful to have a mentor be able to share with them is we know that students, have needs, and that's why you're here. So you weren't brought here because there wasn't a need. And so there are going to be days that are going to be tough that have nothing to do with anything that you have done or not done, but it's just the nature of the needs of the student. And so having that mentor available to be able to coach the person on the spot, it increases the likelihood of them returning the next day. It increases their overall retention, and it increases their overall positive experiences because they know there's someone there to support them. Um, in our other location, it was a unique situation because while we had five new mentees, they were part of a transfer that happened over the summertime, which we're all aware of. But so they started in a new building location, and we thought it would still be helpful for them to have the opportunity to have somebody who is familiar with their new location that they were at be available to talk to them about how things are done in that location. Every building is different, and things are done differently. So having access to somebody with that on-site experience has been very helpful. But it's also allowed that mentor to stretch out and do a few additional things and to do things a little bit different. So at each site, the program looks a little bit different. Where the receptionist is, it's great because we have a wonderful so that's not the instructional assistants, but we have an admin assistant. And I think that's not her actual title, but she's somebody who's been with the organization for a long time. And so she's able to mentor that person and answer the variety of different questions that they have on a daily basis. The current structure provides a shadowing and modeling for the new employee, and it goes both ways. The new employee is able to shadow the mentor to kind of see what their day-to-day looks like, but then they're also able to have that person shadow them and give them instant feedback on what's going on in real time. And so if a student responds a certain way, they can, kind of, discreetly tell them, well, let's step back, let's wait, let's give the student time to calm down. Oftentimes when working with kids, some of the typical things that can happen is that you as the adult supporting the student, you talk too much. You're constantly trying to talk to the student when really what you need to do is step back and give the student an opportunity to calm down or work through some things on their own. And so that mentor is available to give that feedback in real time. Let's see. There's daily check-ins, there's weekly check-ins, and there's a monthly check-in process. But I think the daily check-ins are really beneficial because it's in time on, real live hands-on feedback. The weekly check-ins is more structured where the mentor will ask the person, how's it going? How are they feeling? And I was checking in with him today, and a piece that I was really happy to hear about was there's also the mental health support. They're asking the person, how are you doing? What do you need? And remember this, giving them coaching on how to separate work life from home life. And I think that's such a positive because I think that will add to longevity on the job as well. Because when you have a new job, you have that fear and you want to do well. But if it's a rough day, it's nice to have somebody to coach you and remind you, take a breath, take your breaks, breathe, through it. It's okay. Come, let's try again tomorrow. Let's see. Right now, we are at the kind of the mid-year point where I'm checking in with both the mentors, and then I'll be checking in also with the mentees just to get feedback from them about what they like about the program. I received lots of positive feedback right now where the mentors have shared with me that the mentees are really enjoying it, and they tell them that regularly. And so that's definitely a plus. The mentees that I have checked in with so far have been really positive as well. And it's not a formal check-in, it's just more a little bit more discreet, I guess, where I'm just checking in with them to see how they're doing, making sure that they're feeling well and feeling supported. The next part is our structure that we'll be looking at for next year, which will, this year we started a little bit late, so we didn't have a chance to meet with the mentors ahead of time and do training before their program started. So that's on our agenda for the structure for next year, training and meeting with the mentors prior to the program starting, and then checking in about the shadowing and training opportunities. And we're also moving into the structured and professional development. And so what that looks like right now, we have a company that has videos that they're anywhere from 8 to 15 minutes long. And so the mentor and the mentee can watch the videos together and then have some, real questions and comments and feedback. And the topics are, for example, positive behavioral support, some implementation of accommodations and modifications, and building relationships. And there's a whole list of 40 topics, but I just shared those few to kind of give you an example. And I'm really excited about the building relationship topic in particular, because I think that in this line of work, we spend a lot of time telling, educators, the important thing is to build relationships with kids, build relationships. And we all believe that. But I think that I had an epiphany at one point where, everybody doesn't know how to do that. And it looks different when you have different kids. And so I think it's wonderful to have an opportunity to spend some time really talking with the mentees about what it looks like about and how you go about building relationship with kids and recognizing that all kids are different. So you need to have a tool bag with lots of different resources to try, because if one doesn't work, you pull out another one. If one doesn't work, you pull out another one. But having access to a lot of different options, I think, will allow the mentees to be successful in their new careers here with us. At the end of the year, we're going to wind up close out with feedback and collaboration time, so we can get feedback from both parties about what went well, what might be helpful to do a little bit differently for next year, so that next year we can kick off strong. Provided that we have the funding, we can kick off strong and be in a great place to support both sides. Students benefit from this type of support. And that's all I have for you.
Yolanda, thank you. Board members, questions for Yolanda before we move forward? Okay, so Yolanda, I love that. I love the support for classifieds. I think this group of individuals, as we talked about earlier tonight, can see children at their best and at their most challenging, and to have that support. And I love, like you said, building relationships. It sounds so obvious and yet can be so difficult and need multiple ways on how you connect and really build that thoughtfully and genuinely. So I love that, and good luck. I'm just doing lots of rooting for good funding. That's on you, Dan. Okay, thank you, Yolanda, very much.
Director Wolf, I think that is the end of the entire presentation there. So I think we're ready to move on. I just wanted to thank this group. It's a broad topic area we just talked about, right? We're talking about the whole career trajectory and supporting educators from before they know they want to be educators and licensed staff all the way through advancement. So great job, everybody. Really appreciate that work.
Thank you for having us tonight. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you. And the next presentation this evening is Regional Career Connected Learning. And I see John is here, and we have Jamie Braden and G. Bundy. John,
Yes.
I'll hand it off to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Vice Chair Wolf and Board of Directors, Superintendent Goldman. I am joined tonight with Jamie Brady, and she's a member of our Career and College Readiness team, and G. Bundy is unfortunately unable to make it, and so we'll give you the pleasure of meeting him later. So next slide, please. So when we talk about our Career College Readiness team, it is primarily our Career and College Readiness squad here with Jamie and Sarah and G and Kavana, but we really collaborate and partner with our Northwest STEM Hub. It's just part of our organization, and I believe you previously had them at another board meeting at OMIC in St. Helens, or Scappoose. So they are a big part of what we're trying to do to connect kids to careers and learning. And we also partner, and one of our real big goals is to really build up some of our partnerships with our regional CTE coordinators, our community colleges, workforce development partners, and industry partners. So it really is a collaborative effort. We cannot make these connections without those partnerships in our region. So next slide, please. So for tonight, I'm going to just focus on 4 main things here. The last one there, the Oregon Regional Funding Proposal, as Dan mentioned earlier, is really a promising proposal that we hope and will get it to us eventually, if not this year, in the future. And so I'll touch on some what that might need or might mean for us going forward. So next slide, please. In February is our nationally recognized CTE month. So in our region, we have well over 100 programs of study, thousands of students participating in CTE, making those career relevant classroom activities mean something for them moving forward. So it's really something I'm personally very, very enthusiastic about being a part of and supporting and trying to grow and make those connections. Pictured there are just some snapshots of some work we've been doing to highlight some of our CTE programs in our region. And at the end of this presentation, we have a real quick video example of what we've been doing to do that. So to celebrate CTE month. So next step, next slide, please. So there are really, you notice I crossed out 3 because this legislative concept is really something, again, we're really excited about, and we're, whether it happens or not this year, we're planning for what it means. We're going to be ready whether it happens or not. And so when it does happen, we're going to be ready to just hit the ground running and go with that. So, a little bit more there about what we're launching in terms of what we're calling a Career Bridge, Northwest Career Bridge program, some regional program development, and then as we followed up Nahid and team's presentation about mentoring, what that means specifically for our work in CTE and career and college readiness. So next slide, please. All right, so what I mentioned about it's a career bridge. It's it really is a team, and going back to that partnership where we talked about working with our STEM hub, our community colleges, our industry partners, workforce development, it is taking all those connections and partners and making it more accessible for our students, for our educators in our schools, and for our industry partners. We have all of those entities kind of wondering, how do I get connected with this? How do I do this? We have industry partners. We need a workforce. How do we get connected? How do we get plugged into your schools? And everybody's kind of crossing over. There's all kinds of different overlaps and maps and sets. And so how do we make sense of that? And so this will be our attempt to kind of pull that all together and have a resource for these schools and students to come together and get to those experiences to move them forward in their career planning. So next slide, please. Regional program development is really about taking some of our existing programs and then the needs for programs that do not exist and building those out. We have some things in the works already in our 4 counties. These are things we've been hearing from our superintendents, our regional coordinators, our schools of how we can build out. It's not an exhaustive list. It is an ever-changing list of things we're trying to do. Some of the things have been in place already. As you know, in Tillamook County, there is the Tillamook Education Consortium. They're well down the path with some Future Ready Oregon grants to build out their programming to offer more opportunities for students. We are exploring some unique opportunities in Washington County based on transportation, distribution, logistics, kind of this area of a need in our communities and our workforce that really no entity is really serving. And so we're trying to dip our toes into there and how we can build that out. So this is our way of trying to build out more opportunities for students. And I realize I'm going really fast. I'm trying to catch up. So you're welcome. Next slide, please. There will be plenty of opportunity at the end if you get too exhausted by my rapid pace here. So, and as I mentioned before, building on our mentor teacher program, how do we make that specific for our CTE teachers? A CTE teacher is very unique in our schools. Many of them come not from education backgrounds, but from industry backgrounds. They come in to a classroom with extensive knowledge of their field, but very limited knowledge on how do I even do a seating chart or what's a grade book? All those really things that most educators, they've learned or they've got some training on or some practice on. They come in completely blank on those. Wonderful educators, but they need that support, and it's a very unique type of support. So many mentor teachers that exist can do some of this, but getting really into the particular needs of a CTE teacher takes someone with that CTE knowledge. So we hope to build that out in our efforts. So next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to hand it off to Jamie, and she's going to talk about one of the tools we've selected region-wide to help us move forward and make those connections with all the industry and workforce and stuff we've been talking about. And so she's going to explain that. I know you've been introduced to this at a previous meeting we had in Forest Grove. We had a highlight of that with some teachers there. So this is kind of an update on that and some next steps. So Jamie.
Thank you. Board of Directors and Superintendent Goldman, thank you for your time tonight. I'm excited to be sharing a little bit more about CTE and career connected learning and of course school links. So like John said, last spring at Forest Grove, we highlighted some of the great work that they're doing with this tool. But just as a reminder, SchoolLinks is an online student portfolio that has many layers, including career and college readiness, assessments, college application management. So counselors can track students and how they're applying to colleges and what colleges they're considering. And then career-related learning experiences like work-based learning, and I know those terms get conflated, but internship opportunities, job shadows, and then industry partner engagement and really an industry partner database. So next slide, please. So just a little history on this. A little over 2 years ago, shortly after our team was formed, we reviewed a lot of different portfolios or platforms like SchoolLinks and selected SchoolLinks as a tool to move forward with for our region. And so then we were able to pilot SchoolLinks with multiple different districts. And for the past 2 years, we've had between 7 and 10 districts utilizing SchoolLinks in some capacity. And I have linked the Forest Grove highlight there. They're using it in their 9th grade success classrooms. And then coming into fall of 2024, we onboarded some new districts, and we've been providing support through PLCs online and just making sure that it's mostly counselors that are facilitating this tool with students, but we have some advisory teachers and some CTE teachers, but just making sure, this is just as much of a tool for career readiness as it is a technology tool that the buildings have to integrate as well. And so making sure that they're fully supported in that implementation process has been a big piece of it. And then in November, our regional superintendents approved expansion of SchoolLinks. And so we're super excited to be able to offer SchoolLinks as a tool to the majority of our school districts included in the LSP starting in really August of 2025. And so we're going to be expanding schools, and most districts that we've talked to are ready to jump in the fall. They're actually very eager and want to start training this spring. And so we're setting up those trainings to get them on board. So we're excited about that. Next slide. So really, what are the goals of this tool? Well, we saw a need for, districts were using a variety of different tools, everything, if you're familiar with Oregon CIS, to different platforms that the high schools mostly were using. And we saw a need for students in our region to have the same access to career readiness and college readiness tools, as well as work-based learning connections with industry partners. And so we saw that need in our region. So really giving students that access and providing them with information and resources, empowering students to take charge of their career learning and career planning. The tool itself is really intuitive for students. And once they get into it, we've found that they really drive the use of it. And so that makes it even better. And then the career related learning, this is the piece that STEM Hub really partners with us regularly on what career related learning activities are happening in our region. And we see this tool as being an asset to the STEM Hub activities as well. And then for educators, so many benefits, but the data about what their students are interested in, what aligns with their qualities through their assessments, the student assessments, the connections to industry partners, that's a big one that we've been working on, and developing more connections with industry and having a way to manage a database that districts in our region, particularly high schools and CTE teachers and counselors in our region, can see what industry partners are near me, what industry partners are in a certain field, how can I connect a student with a particular interest to an industry partner that has an opportunity. And we know there's a lot of duplication of effort in that. Counselors and career guidance folks across the region are doing those same things and making outreach to industry. So we're trying to find ways to reduce that and make more capacity for that individual career coaching that counselors can specialize in. And then there are connections to Senate Bill 3, the Higher Education and Career Path Skills class, which is a mouthful, but that will be required for the class of 2027 and beyond. And SchoolLinks is partnering with us to make sure that there are activities and there are a lot already in the system that meet the standards of that course requirement. So we're excited about that feature as well. Next slide. So this is just a visual, thanks to G Bundy, who's not here tonight, but he created this just to show a little bit about what we've been doing. G and I have spent the last few months meeting industry partners, really focused on that transportation sector that was mentioned, and connecting. SchoolLinks will be that connector for industry partners to students and staff and family members that are supporting their students. So we're excited about that, and we're excited about building out that industry partner database just to make more opportunities available for students. If anyone's interested in learning more about SchoolLinks, wanting to know what it looks like for the student side or anything like that, feel free to reach out.
All right, thank you, Jamie. And again, we'll have some questions here at the end. Let's continue on. We want to highlight, this is a series of videos we've been doing and showing at our Regional Superintendent's Council. And it is basically an effort to kind of share what's going on in our region so people get ideas and get inspiration from what we're all doing. This particular highlight is of Neocani High School and their an event they put on. So Stuart, next slide, if you just hit the video and we'll watch it together. And there should be sound.
Sorry, all. Give me 1 second here. Is audio coming through for y'all?
No.
No. I apologize. John, you might want to roll on and we can find a different way to share the video because I don't
Sure,
think
yeah, we
the
can either,
audio's following the share.
as you can see, there's a student getting ready to throw an axe there. So it's a can't miss video. you'll enjoy it. And we'll send that out to you in one way or another after this meeting. So
So
try-
Superintendent Goma, I think it's in our packet, right? Or
Mhm.
was, because I had access in the packet. So I think Valerie, you can confirm that. So I encourage the board if you.
Okay, yeah, please take it.
Make sure
It's
you go
a
back and look at it.
4-minute
All right.
video, and there's people climbing trees and throwing axes, and there's a fire, and I mean, come on. Who wouldn't get excited with that? So thank you, Stuart, for your efforts. Next slide, please. Yeah, so as Superintendent Goldman mentioned, we are very excited about the potential for some really targeted and essential funding to power our CTE programs. We're one of the few states that really have a very limited dedicated allocation for CTE. It's really quite minimal, and it's really in some cases just reserved to our Perkins funding, and districts really struggle with creating these programs and really doing innovative things. It's almost a kind of a remarkable thing that they've been able to do what they have with the limited funds. And so it's a much needed thing. It has a lot of support behind it from industry, from schools all across the board. And again, it is one of those things where we're competing with other priorities in educational funding. And so it's one of those things that, you know, it's a dream and we hope that it comes through, but if not, it really is our goal of the goal of the bill, and it actually has a bill number 3552 now, HB 3552. And so it is to create these career-connected learning centers that will be facilitated and powered by our ESDs in a way to get out and build some classrooms, build some facilities, equip them, hire teachers to make those connections and move this work forward so students have more opportunities to engage in these careers. Because as you know, there are thousands and thousands of unfilled, very good paying jobs in our communities that are just going unfilled. And a lot of the reasons people don't know about them. Kids don't know about them. They don't know how to access them, or they have limited ways to access them. So we're really hopeful that this can become a reality someday. So just wanted to highlight that, and we will be, sharing ways in which this bill moves forward, and ways that we can all advocate for it in the future. So next slide, and thank you everyone for your attention, and very open to any questions, comments, feedback you have for us.
Any questions from the board? Okay, John and Jamie, thank you. It's such a critical component for students, and love to see the work that's being done and the hopeful future funding to continue to grow it. So thank you for your time this evening. So at this point, we will move on to our third presentation, which is Recovery Schools.
Good evening, board directors and Superintendent Goldman. Are we also getting Kathy? There she is. Perfect. Okay, so I'll get us started here as Kathy joins us. There she is. Okay, perfect. Oh, it says loading. That's great. One moment. There we go. I specifically asked Stuart if I could lead the presentation so I wouldn't have to say next slide. So I was getting nervous when it said loading. Okay, well, welcome. Kathy and I are really excited to talk to you all today about a potential opportunity that we're looking into and learning about and starting to collaborate with some partners around, specifically around recovery schools. So Kathy's going to kick us off with just talking a little bit more about what the opportunity is.
Yeah. Thank you, Megan. Good evening, Vice Chair Wolf and Superintendent Goldman. I'm really excited to talk about this potential opportunity for our agency, because I think it could be really amazing for the students in our region. Megan and I are going to talk a little bit about just an overview of what recovery schools are. We're going to talk about some of the data that supports the need for recovery high schools, and then what the process would be for development and applying for a grant to potentially open a recovery school in our region. So what is a recovery school? Well, in Oregon, recovery schools were established through a piece of legislation, House Bill 2767. And the intent was to provide a high school experience specific to students who are in recovery from substance misuse and also, potential behavior challenges that go along with that. Currently, there are 3 recovery high schools in Oregon, and just to kind of for perspective, there aren't very many out there in the nation. There are only 42 nationally. So this is not a common program that's offered to students, but as Megan will share in a little bit, there's a great need for this. The goal is to provide a high quality education for students. So students in high schools enroll in a recovery school. They receive a full educational program and actually are expected to graduate from the recovery school. Within that program, they receive substance abuse and mental health support. It's a supportive environment to support students to maintain their abstinence, stay in recovery. It is not a treatment program. So, a lot of times part of the process is partnering with other agencies or supporting students to access treatment, but it's really about supporting their abstinence and ongoing recovery while attending school. What's kind of interesting about this, it's a little bit different than other schools that we run here at Northwest Regional ESD, is that a recovery school is something that students can opt into. It's not a special education program. It's not a placement. So all of our other school programs, students enter those programs through district special education placement. So they get there through the IEP process. Recovery schools operate as a school of choice. And then that last bullet point I mentioned is an abstinence focus. Go ahead and advance the slide, Megan. This is really important to have that abstinence focus. So one of the reasons that a recovery high school, that specific model, is important is this statistic in the first bullet point here, which is 97% of high school students who return to school after completing a recovery program for substance use disorder are offered drugs that very first day that they return. It's very, very difficult for young people and for anyone of any age to be able to stay in recovery if they're in an environment where they're having repeated access to the substances that they're addicted to. Another reason that's really important is that school professionals typically do not have the specialized training they need to support young people who are diagnosed with substance abuse disorders. There's some overlap in what we do in special education with our social emotional learning, but there are some additional very unique needs that students in recovery need to have addressed. This last bullet point I think is really, really important. I've been doing some research in the recovery school models and what is successful for kids. And that peer-to-peer support is extremely important, not only to ensure that students are around others something just fell in the background, not only to ensure that students are around others who are not using, but also around other peers who are actively supporting their recovery from addictions. Right, next slide. All right, so why are they effective? Like I said, it's really that peer-to-peer support is extremely important. It really helps students. They have the opportunity to engage actively with other students who are on a similar journey as they are. And as I said, evidence shows that peer support is highly effective for students. As I said before, recovery schools, the model in Oregon is that they're abstinence focused. They really, really elevate that youth choice, power, and voice. So students are active participants in the work, both for themselves and supporting their peers in the program. But within that, there are different pathways that students may choose to recovery. So there's quite a bit of flexibility in terms of how we can design individualized recovery programs for students. Next slide. All right, so here's a little bit of data about how we know recovery high schools are effective. So compared to students who are not in who are in regular high schools or alternative type school programs, students in recovery high schools have much higher graduation rates, attend at higher rates, more likely to abstain from substances, and have significantly fewer days using marijuana and other drugs. All right, next slide. And Megan, I think this is where you pick up.
Yeah, so I think, that's kind of an overview of what these types of what recovery schools are, why we feel like they're effective, and just looking kind of at our state and the needs of our state. This is a really high need, which is why, ODE is looking to open more recovery schools. We rank third highest nationally for substance use disorder among adolescents. Those rates are above the national average and have been increasing every year since 2019. The number of overdose deaths in Oregon has almost tripled since 2019. And Oregon teenagers are 38% more likely to use drugs than the average American teen. So like the state as a whole, this is a need. And then, Kathy and I've really been looking specifically within our region. We talked to each of the different superintendent county groups, and 100% of our superintendents have expressed that this is a high need. Every county said they would like to have a recovery high school in their county. We can't start at all 4, but it is a need. We've really started to zero in on Clatsop County, which I'm going to give you a little bit of data around this in just a moment. But there are some community partners we've started talking to, Clatsop Community College and Clatsop Behavioral Health, which have both expressed a really high need in the county for this type of support. We also know that our rural counties have less options for treatment and recovery than the Portland metro area or people that are on the I-5 corridor. And when talking to all 3 of our more rural counties, actually all 3, although they want a high school, all think Clatsop is the right place to start because they think it's a big enough area to actually get a first campus up and running. And then Brian and his team actually helped me pull the student health survey data and look specifically at Clatsop County, our other counties, and in comparison to the state. So here you can see that students in Clatsop County are reporting that they use substances within the last 30 days at a higher rate than our state average. And looking specifically here, this has both the state and all of our counties. Have you used drugs in the last 30 days? Clatsop County is higher than the state, and if you add those together for 8th and 11th grade, is higher than the rest of the counties. And so there definitely seems to be a high need in Clatsop County, obviously a high need everywhere, but makes sense as a place to potentially begin.
All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the application process. So I mentioned earlier that there are currently 3 recovery high schools in Oregon, and they are funded through a grant with the Department of Education. ODE has let us know that they're anticipating opening at least 1 additional recovery high school for the 25-26 school year, and the application process should open pretty soon, sometime around mid-February, so this month. And then the awards will go out in April. Megan and I have been researching the application requirements and looking at what some of the existing recovery school programs are doing, and we've had really great communication with them about the process, and are able to, in many ways, probably follow some of the templates that they've created already. We need to create a mission and vision around recovery. We need to identify a location. Specifically, that location cannot be another high school. So it just, can't be part of a high school campus, because of course we want to make sure that students have that separation from their peers who may be using or maybe selling or giving them substances that they should, alcohol or drugs, things like that. We need to develop an acceptance criteria that really centers educational equity. We need to create a budget plan, and then make sure that we have the ability to offer a full high school curriculum and credit recovery options, assuming that many students will come to us credit deficient. We'll be tracking course credits that lead to an Oregon diploma. And then this last bullet point is really, really key, is making sure that we have community support and involvement, because these programs are not only about what happens within the recovery high school program, but also ensuring that when students leave school at the end of the day, they are participating in activities with peers that are going to support their ongoing recovery. And so that community involvement, making sure that there are activities for students to engage in, that they have access to treatment, all of those kinds of things are really essential to the success of this type of program. All right, Megan?
Yeah, so we did want to give a brief overview of the funding model that has been shared with us from ODE, just because we do multiple ODE contracts. And I think it's good for us to just talk a little bit about what they're saying this is going to look like. So basically there's 3 funding streams that have been talked about. The state school fund, which is basic student-based budgeting per pupil. There's a statewide education initiatives account, which is going to provide supplemental costs for the program. And then the general fund, we get funding for special education services basically as well. I was very specific to ask about how funds would be either dispersed or reimbursed. And so this is a disbursement model. So you would get it, we'd pull it down quarterly, similar to what we do for like our SSA, integrated guidance technical assistance funding. And the formula that they're currently stating they're going to use is you would have a $600,000 base start regardless of the number of students. So for example, Kathy and I are projecting we'd probably start with like 10 students the first year. I know that sounds really small, but that's how a lot of these programs start and then build up. 10 students would not get you $600,000 if you just did per pupil funding. So that's why they're saying there'd be a base no matter how many students to get you started. And then you would get $32,000 per student, which is basically triple the usual funding. Once you have enough students to be over the 600K at that. So the threshold's about 19 kids. So once you get to 19, then when you multiply the 32 by the number of students, you're going to be above the 600. So then you just get whatever your per pupil is. They are making an assumption that 25% of your students will be special education students. That's higher than our typical 11% cap for special ed. And they said they don't actually count. They just give you the assumed 25%. With 11,000 per student for the 25% of your population. Then there's ability for reimbursement through high cost disability, similar to how a typical district would use that type of funding model. So our next steps that we're working on, obviously we wanted to present to you all and kind of let you know where we were and get you all updated. We are working with Clatsop community partners and school districts to form an advisory group. And we're meeting later this month with Clatsop Behavioral Health. Kathy's really been working on analyzing the budget and making sure that it's something that is sustainable and doable for us within the model. We've been starting to research around facility options. We've started some initial very exciting conversations with Clatsop Community College as one potential. We need to do some tribal consultation. So we've been reaching out there and have started to schedule some meetings and then co-develop the necessary school planning materials with that advisory group and our local tribes. And so listed there are some of the same things that Kathy talked to you about previously that we'll be working to co-design. As we think about it, this is an opportunity that we definitely want to pursue. We don't have a slide that says questions, but questions.
Yeah, I'm so well trained for the question slide. Board members, any questions about recovery schools? Doug.
This is fascinating. This will be really interesting to watch, and it's very, very much needed in Clatsop County. I can tell you that. I'm curious about transportation. What are your thoughts with that?
Yeah, that's actually required. So again, unlike the other school programs that the ESD runs where districts provide transportation, we would be required to provide transportation. And there are a couple of options. We could contract with districts to provide the transportation, whether we would contract with a large one or small one. We've looked a little bit into public transportation, but obviously there aren't a ton of options. There are potentially some in Clatsop County. The recovery schools in Portland metro area can give kids bus passes, but so yeah, that's a great question.
Okay, thank you. Very exciting. So we'll be cheering you on and watching to see how it goes. And I think, all right, Superintendent Goldman, you pointed, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm pointing at my Hollywood square to the left, which is Dorian.
Well,
Sorry, I used the raise hand function rather than, I can also wait though.
Oh my
right?
gosh. No, I do not see any other hands up. So go for it.
Sorry. I have a couple of questions, and I also may ask some questions today that I don't want to put you on the spot for a lot of technical information. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions, but I welcome a follow-up via email or separate from this space. I really appreciated that you shared some background in the research surrounding why this model. I'd be curious to have some information from other sources beyond just the Recovery School Association, those who may not have a vested interest, and from academic institutions. I am very curious what each of the public health agencies in the counties think about this model, as well as the Oregon Health Authority. As in my day job, like I've done a lot of reading and care very deeply and know the value of peer support. But I think when we think about substance use disorder, I'm really curious why not a co-location of treatment model, and also look at why is it that folks do not have behavioral health access and other forms of public health access to treat substance use disorder. I'm also very curious about potential unintended consequences or any differences in racial disparities, like which types of students are flagged as having substance use disorder, or what sort of behavioral things may be happening in schools that would make an educator suggest that a student may be eligible for a program like this. I also have some questions and concerns on how we're identifying students with substance use disorder. I think we know that folks who may have access to their parents' prescription cabinet, that's a very different type of experience than, say, a youth who was using marijuana. I mean, the spectrum of what we consider substance and substance use disorder, I think we really need to look toward healthcare and public health experts, as well as folks in the education space. And so for me, I have a lot of curiosities. I'm not expressing necessarily a professional assessment or opinion in one way or the other. But I do have a lot of curiosities about moving students to new locations, especially if we're not considering this as an on-site treatment option, knowing that substance use disorder is something that requires treatment. I want to make sure that we're crystal clear on the problems that we're aiming to solve, so that the solutions that we're putting in place actually address those problems. So again, I'm approaching this with curiosity, wanting to see a little bit more information. But I think the primary question that I have today in summary is why this model compared to co-locating public health services in existing high schools. And again, I understand the value of peer support.
Yeah. Some of these questions, Megan, I will need to get back to you on, particularly some of the additional research. In terms of the mental health aspect of it, I believe we can have partnerships where students could receive mental health treatment. It's just that the model that is supported by the grant is focused on the educational aspect. So it's not that there couldn't be a contract or partnership with a recovery or treatment program to be able for students to access them.
And part of, and we're still learning about all of this, so I am far from an expert in the area, but we have, we spoke really extensively with Rivercrest, which is the school that Multnomah Education Service District runs, and built into their day, and something that's part of the budget that Kathy's working on, is having some recovery specialists and like mental health providers on site, and recovery mentors. And so there's definitely a different type of staffing model. I think the key piece of saying it's not treatment is the expectation is that the school itself is not a treatment program, it's a school program. And so most students are actually in treatment or come from treatment into the program. They do say with the model, you don't have to have already finished treatment to get into the school, but you have to be clearly stating that you're wanting that and that you're on that road. Like if you're actively using and you're saying you don't care, that's not someone who'd be eligible. And it is a school of choice. So a teacher can't say, I think this kid has an issue and needs to go to the school. It has to be that student is choosing. So I think for us, a big piece is trying to work to partner with the local health agencies and treatment programs. I think that's going to be the best way for us to think about services. I know NWRESD runs treatment groups after hours in that location so that students are able to access them. So there's some different pieces that we're looking into. I don't think that extensively answers all of your questions or concerns, but might just glean a little bit more around the model and kind of how at least MESD has approached it. But I think the big thing here is making sure they still have a really academic, access to the academic high school experience and the high school, a high school experience, while being supported in their recovery. So.
My last question, does the grant program require in any way that the site be located in proximity or ensure that there's access to behavioral and other forms of healthcare services? Or, do the other examples that we have in this state, like, are they ensuring that the folks that enroll in that school have adequate access to care outside of school?
Yeah, Megan and I have been researching it. I don't think it's a specific requirement of the grant that I recall and what I've read through. I see Megan nodding. Yeah.
Yeah, the grant doesn't say that we have to ensure that every student is enrolled in a treatment enrolled or has access to a treatment program. But I do think that's part of what we would be doing is by partnering with local treatment facilities and health agencies and recovery programs, right, is making those connections and making sure that people have the access and being a central hub of being able to connect people. But no, it's not a specific, I don't think, requirement of the grant to do that, but does ask extensively about your partnerships and who you're partnering with, and that they need to be recovery-based programs and treatment programs and things like that. So there is some clear expectation around partnerships with local agencies, not just running this thing, on your own.
Yeah. And I think the advisory committee component is really key as well, to make sure that we're bringing the right voices into the room to talk about some of the things you brought up, Dorian, such as really considering what the application process looks like, how we're communicating about the program, how we're making sure that students have equal access, not only in terms of, once they get to the application process, but also in terms of even being aware that it's an option. So all of those things are important. And then also really making sure that we've identified who the right community partners are, and we're really leveraging all of them, to the full extent that we can on behalf of the students.
Miriam, go.
I'm going to try my best to not lose my voice. Sorry, I'm really sick. So I think some questions I had was, is there any individuals or students that are not, or that could be excluded based on grant requirements? So what comes to mind for me are juvenile justice involved students who have, could have some misdemeanors, potentially felonies, and who are also in really high need of recovery schools and who are making changes, but sometimes they're excluded because they have illegal, involvement. And so I just wanted to see if the grant had any specific verbiage that says these are students that we won't be able to take based on grant requirements. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a really good question.
It's a school choice, right? And so students are able to select to go there. There is nothing that says certain students will be excluded. It's actually part of the application is how are you making sure that your enrollment criteria is equitable, is inclusive, does ensure that you are allowing diverse students the opportunity to be in the program. And so that's actually a key component of the application, is wanting to make sure that there's access to whichever students would like to engage in the program. So if they were going to typically be at Seaside High, if you were at Seaside High School or a charter school or, alternative school in the area, you should be able to select into the school.
Okay, great conversation and questions. Superintendent Goldman.
Thank you. God, those were awesome questions, and I know we'll get some information back out to the board. There's just a couple of things that I wanted to just point out to the board. Number one, it's a grant application. The grant, we haven't applied yet. The reason why we wanted to do this as a report and discussion item is to get a sense and help the board understand the sense of this program. And then when and if we do end up applying, because of the timeline, we will most likely ask for forgiveness rather than permission to apply. But remember that the board always has the opportunity to deny funding if it's provided, right? So the board will still have the say in whether we will do this program. So that's one thing. I do want to make sure that we share some challenges that have not been shared, and this is just like Oregon specific type challenges. So number one, this is only the second biennium that this program will exist. So there are 3 schools in the state, as Kathy and Megan mentioned. The funding for that program this year, I'm going to get the numbers probably wrong, so Kathy's going to correct me, but I think the ADM amounts were about $45,000 per student enrolled. And now you see quite quickly that the state is changing that in the next biennium. And so I just want everybody to, we got to be wide-eyed that all these programs in grant and aid are, and you see it in EIECSE and the big scale. We see it in smaller programs like school safety and prevention, which is a 1 FTE program that we have right now that's on the cut block in the legislature. But every time we go to the legislature in a program like this, we're going to be fighting. And we just got to know, is it worth the fight, right? Is serving kids in this way worth the effort in the fight? Because we're always going to be in this, we don't have enough money and the state's moving the funding picture around. I think we believe and our superintendents believe that this is a necessary service without thinking about all the questions that Director Russell brought up. So, so I just want to be wide-eyed about it. So that's 2. And the third is, this is going to be an unbelievably competitive application. And so we might go for it, and I believe we will probably go for this, pending some additional research, et cetera, that the directors, that Megan and Kathy both shared. But there's a lot of interest in these programs. Every region has people who think they need it. And there's going to be, right now in the legislature, there's going to be 1 additional school in the whole state. And most of them are in the Portland metro area right now. And even though Astoria is not in the Portland metro area, it's certainly closer than Burns or Umatilla or Douglas County somewhere. And so it'll be stretch. It's going to be a stretch grant for us. And I just want to make sure the board is clear. Like, it could be exciting for a lot of us, but it might really not come to pass this time around.
Dorian.
Just really quickly, I want to clarify that I'm not telling you to not go after this grant, and I definitely want to see increased investment in addressing substance use disorder in youth. Like, I don't think we have enough resources to do that as a community, as a region, as a state. Like, if this is the only option and model that's available, fine. I'm just questioning if this is actually going to have the outcomes that we want. And that's not an us problem, that's the granting agency's problem. So I'm supportive of your steps ahead, and I'm coming at this from a shared value of, I want to address substance use disorder in youth. And in my day job, I see this every day. I know Miriam does as well. Like, there are a lot of factors to consider. And it's not a critique of the staff here. You're doing great work. I just really, I want to see more investment than we already have. And so I hear you, Dan. You have my support. And I wish for better and for more.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, I thought the questions were just really thoughtful, insightful, and how do we ensure we're doing, great work going forward. And Dan, you may not be needing this, but my sense is that that's like a nod, go forth if that's what the team wants to do. Am I misreading anyone, or just go? Okay. All right. Well, thank you both. Just a wonderful presentation. And as Dorian said, just a great opportunity, hopefully. And just, I know you'll put together a fabulous proposal. So good luck with that. And all the pieces hopefully fall together. So, so I think with this, then we move forward. Kathy, Megan, any other last thoughts or? Okay.
No, we're excited for the opportunity, and we're taking it step by step. As we work through this process, there are a lot of unknowns. As Dan said, being only one additional opportunity to apply for this, but we're working quickly to keep going, and we're excited.
Thank you. So our final, not our final, but the next one on reports and discussions brings Debbie back, and we'll do first read on policies.
Good evening. Excuse me. We see kind of a combination of proposed policies tonight in terms of, certainly as we take a look at what information we require, the proposal of BDDH. Currently, we require those that speak publicly to the board to give very specific personal information around their specific address, where they live. By considering the proposed policy there would just require public comment to include the county that they live in and their name, and would be able to maybe limit some of the record of personally identifiable information that's out. And then GBN and JFE. It's interesting, and the board may be aware that the federal law of Title IX, which does speak to sexual harassment and some of these things, had come out in August with an update with a new set of rules for Title IX that does involve sexual harassment. That recently, in the last couple of weeks, has been struck down, and we've been reverted back to 2020. That being said, the ESD has to still follow the state law. And so I'm just giving the board a heads up. We may be ping-ponging a little bit back and forth between what is sexual harassment, what are those things that fall under those protected activities that you cannot engage in. And so the proposed policy brings us compliant with expectations from the state. I do fully expect that some of the policies that we have updated, we will be having the opportunity to revisit. I just haven't moved those back up to the list until we see where the ping pong lands. So these are here for your consideration.
Thank you, Debbie. Board, any questions? Comments? Okay, all right, thank you. And with that, Superintendent Goldman will shift to administrative reports.
Yes, I see we're behind schedule, and so I'm happy to take any questions the board might have. I just appreciate the depth of the reports, staff.
No, I agree. They're always wonderfully put together, and just a reflection of all the conversations we've had tonight, the depth of work that's getting done. So any additional questions, comments? Okay, I think we need a little icon in the corner that shakes its head back and forth or up and down. With that, we will close reports and discussions and move forward to action items. And the first is approved December 24, January 25 financial statements. Jordan, I believe he is there, the beautiful sunset, I think.
Yeah, it's one of the backgrounds that's loaded into Zoom, and I love San Francisco, so figured why not. It's great to be with you all tonight, and recognizing what Superintendent Goldman just said. I know that the meeting has run long. There are a few notable things in the financial report. I do also want to thank the board for your graciousness in not having the period ended December 31 at the January meeting due to logistical challenges. That report, the spreadsheet part of the report is included below the report for the period ended January 31. So you have it there. You can see how the numbers moved from December to January. But the narrative really just focuses on the period ending January 31, since that's the most up to date. One particular thing that I want to note is in the general fund, there is a ending fund balance projection that I include every month. And I wanted to explicitly call out that I have not removed the $1.5 million interfund loan that the board approved from that projection. And so if we are not able to secure a different funding source for completing that project. We will need to move that 1.5 million. I will wait till the end of the year to do that because we are pursuing other options, and the way that the state requires us to account for interfund loans, it's really only in situations where we need to take money out of a fund for more than 12 months. And so we can borrow the cash kind of informally from the general fund for a year without making the formal transfer. But we have the authorization from the board if we need it, if it comes to that formal transfer. But I just don't want anybody caught off guard if that balance gets reduced. The other thing to point out is that the special revenue fund is cash negative as of January 31. And because of everything that's gone on, I understand that is probably concerning when you see that red, because I have it conditionally formatted to be red when it goes negative. We are back into the normal kind of flow of the rhythm of business that we have with these reimbursement grants. I do think that the financial report, as you see it, does show why Superintendent Goldman and I have been advocating so much with the state, and I also want to thank board members who have been advocating with the state for changing how we get funds. The fund being cash negative by 6 million kind of conceals the fact that we have 26 million, or excuse me, 24 million sitting out there, because we had a beginning balance of 18 million. So when you take the 18 million plus the 6 million that's out, or that shows negative, it's actually $24 million that we have out and not yet recovered. We do have more than $15 million worth of claims already submitted, and then we have another 7 million that we're incurring this month that goes along with that. And so, you know, these payments will come in. We have all of our agreements in place and executed. We don't have the cash flow concerns that we had last year. This is normal rhythm of business, but it does highlight how much the ESD has to extend out while we wait for these cash payments to come in from the state. And any delays in funding from the state would create significant challenges for us. And so we continue to work on that with especially our two largest programs, EIECSE and Regional Inclusive Services, moving those to distribution models or some other solution that allows funding to flow more, let's say, expeditiously, is something that we're going to need to have. Other than that, performance in all of our funds is very much on track with what we saw before. I'm not anticipating any appropriations issues. I did confirm with our auditors that the board's resolution for the interfund loan is sufficient for appropriating the additional transfer out of that fund if needed. And so, you know, fund performance across the board and cash performance are both where we expect them to be, where, you know, that is typical with a normal new biennium year. There's a better way to say that. I don't know the best way to say it, but, you know, going into this next biennium, we're going to have the same thing we had going into last biennium, where we have those procurement challenges at the state and we have some cash flow constraints. And so the overall cash position of the ESD, where it's expected to land at the end of this year, we will not be able to float operations for as long as we did this last year. I do think that we will land in a place where we have sufficient cash on hand to finance operations through October 31. And after that, we will need to be able to claim reimbursements in very short order in November. So we are entering into a time that's a little more constrained. And so again, Dan and I will continue advocating with the state and helping them understand those issues. I know that the other ESDs, Northwest Regional gets highlighted in a lot of the advocacy efforts, but I know several ESDs have reached out to me to thank our board, Dan and me, for advocating, because this is something that affects all ESDs. We're just the biggest, and so you see it the most here. But as board members that are helping us with this, I do want to extend the thanks of other ESD CFOs and of course myself for the work that you're doing to help us with this.
Oh, Dan, go for it.
Thank you, Vice Chair Wolf. And I just wanted to give, and thank you, Jordan, for the report. I wanted to give a brief update on all the efforts that are happening, and get them out of the shadows into the light. So specific shout outs to Maureen over here and Becky. They have been tenacious with their relationships with folks in the legislature. Yesterday, I mentioned at the beginning that I spent a lot of time in the Capitol. One of the meetings I had in the Capitol was with Representative Bowman's office. And they are drafting a bill. It must be dropped this week because of timelines on when you have to drop bills. And there's some nuance because of some legal advice from the Legislative Fiscal Office. But the gist is that ODEs get to get the money out the door for EIECSE before we perform services. On Friday, we have a meeting with the Department of Education and all the contract holders for EIECSE and Regional Inclusive Services. Of course, on Friday, I have all 20 superintendents during that time. So Jordan will be attending on my behalf or on the behalf of the organization. And Lori Sattenspiel is also going to be attending on that meeting on behalf of OAESD, but really on our behalf. So we believe that I'm optimistic that that meeting will bear some fruit and we will not need a bill. And I just want to put it out, like, if that is the case, and that's our hope, obviously, but I am seeing some light here from some of the messaging I'm getting from ODE that at least we will be able to get some cash at the beginning of the year rather than, you know, this crazy scenario we're in that Jordan's referenced. And if that is the case, I just want to be blunt here. I feel very comfortable then, even though the funding for the program will likely be insufficient for the kind of program we want to run. I know this board is highly committed to early childhood special education services in our region, and we want to do this program at all, you know. So I believe on Friday, if we get some level of decent news by the next board meeting, I'll be able to recommend, hopefully, I'll be able to recommend that we can move this program forward into the next biennium. So we'll see if all that comes to bear. It's good to have a bill in our back pocket that is ready to be dropped if Friday doesn't go well. And Maureen and Becky should get all the kudos for that. So thank you for that.
Well, Superintendent Goldman, thank you. I mean, for those of you that know Rep. Bowman, he started his elected political career as a school board member, and I think he has a passion for the work that we're trying to accomplish for these children. And I think it's just a common sense approach that he's really trying to help us move forward. So I just want to do a shout out to Representative Bowman and his team to support this effort. Jordan, as always, your reports are very detailed. I always appreciate the work you put in to communicate where we are financially. And if there's no other questions from the board, I will entertain a motion.
Chair Stevens moves to accept the financials.
I'll second.
Motion was made by Director Stevens and seconded by Director Riley to approve the financial statements for January 25 and December 24 as presented. And all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you again, Jordan. And I think our final action item this evening is adopt resolution 25006, Women's History Month. And hello, Inger, and welcome. And we look forward to your presentation.
In and gone. Hold on a second.
I'm here. Hi.
Okay, I don't know what happened. Sorry. I was giving a good try. Good to see you all this evening, Vice Chair Wolf, Superintendent Goldman, and members of the board. I'm Inger McDowell Hardy, and I work in the Office of Equity and Family Partnerships at the ESD. And I'm here tonight to present the Proclamation for Women's History Month. So this proclamation of the Board of Directors of the Northwest Regional Education Service District in Clatsop, Columbia, Tillamook, and Washington Counties, Oregon, recognizes March 1st to March 31st, 2025 as Women's History Month, celebrating the contributions, achievements, and history of women. Whereas throughout history, women have played an essential role in shaping our society, breaking barriers in politics, science, arts, education, and social justice, often overcoming significant obstacles and systemic inequities. Whereas the Northwest Regional Education Service District acknowledges the vital contributions of women in education, leadership, and community building within our organization and beyond. Whereas of 2025, women comprise 83% of Northwest Regional ESD's total employee population, holding critical roles in education and administration, with the majority of the 9 members of the board of directors identifying as women, Whereas women, particularly those from marginalized communities, continue to face barriers such as pay inequity, limited access to healthcare, and underrepresentation in leadership roles, necessitating ongoing advocacy and systemic change. Whereas it is imperative that all members of society be mindful and take action to prevent harm, we honor and acknowledge issues of domestic violence, human trafficking, and the missing and murdered Indigenous women crisis, recognizing the disproportionate violence faced by Indigenous women and the need for action to address and prevent these injustices. Whereas this month provides an opportunity to reflect on the progress made and the work that remains to be achieved to achieve equity for all women, especially those who face intersecting forms of discrimination based on race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, disability, and socioeconomic status. Now, therefore, it be resolved by members of the Northwest Regional Education Service District Board of Directors. 1, Northwest Regional ESD recognizes March 2025 as Women's History Month and honors the significant achievements and contributions of women throughout history and within our communities. 2, that Northwest Regional ESD commits to amplifying the voices of women, supporting their advocacy for equitable access to human rights, including paid family leave, childcare, healthcare, and pay equity. 3, that the board encourages all staff, students, and community members to engage in appropriate activities, programs, and ceremonies to celebrate Women's History Month with a focus on education, empowerment, and reflection. 4, that Northwest Regional ESD affirms its dedication to fostering inclusive practices that address and dismantle systemic inequities, ensuring all women have the opportunity to thrive and lead in safe and equitable environments. 5, that the board acknowledges and celebrates the diverse experiences and perspectives of women, including those from historically underrepresented and marginalized communities, as integral to the success and strength of our organization and society. And 6, that Northwest Regional ESD commits to raising awareness about women's issues, injustices, and crises, and collaborating with local and national organizations to support initiatives that seek justice, prevention, and healing for affected communities. This resolution is effective immediately upon adoption this 12th day of February, 2025.
Ingrid, thank you. And as always, I so appreciate all the resources that are included. And I can't think of a more important time to lift up and celebrate and honor women in history, and for us to do that this evening. So with that, I'll offer up an opportunity for anyone to comment and also look for a motion to adopt. All right, ladies, use your voice.
I move we adopt resolution 25006 as presented.
And I second it, Michelle Graham.
Motion was made by Director Riley and seconded by Director Graham to approve resolution 25006. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you again, Ingrid, for sharing and reading. Okay, I got a feeling board comments will be it's time to adjourn, but I will open that up in case someone has a comment.
No, I have a comment.
Go ahead, Director Riley.
I just want to remind everybody that next month on the 19th of March is the lovely ESD Foundation fundraiser. Those of you who've been there before, it's a lovely event, and it's in the new offices of our legal attorney, and it's just lovely event. And the funds all go to the small grants that we give to educators in the ESD and in our component districts. So I encourage everybody to attend and come prepared with your checkbook.
I love it. To be ready to raise the pat or the hand. So if there are no other comments, I know we went long, but a lot of really important information and great conversation this evening. And I appreciate you all very, very much for giving your time. Superintendent Goldman, any other thoughts? Are we good?
We're good. Stay warm, stay safe. And thanks for your time. Appreciate you all.
Okay. With that, we are adjourned. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
Stay safe, y'all.